All right, today we're going to talk about something pretty scary, a type of cancer that's both rare and absolutely devastating. And the wild part? It can hide in your body for decades, completely silent, a ghost of an exposure from maybe 50 years ago. We're diving into the story of mesothelioma.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This stat, it comes from this one region in Turkey. Can you even imagine a village where, in some families, more than half the people die from the same exact disease? It sounds like the plot of a movie, right? But for them, it was a terrifying reality.
So you have to ask, right? What on earth could cause something like that? An epidemic of a rare cancer just popping up in one spot? Well, the answer? It's not straightforward. It's actually a fascinating and really dangerous story about how our environment can clash with our own genetics.
So, to get to the bottom of this, our story starts in these tiny villages in Cappadocia, Turkey. And the secret to this whole mystery, it was literally built into the walls of their homes.
Okay, so here's what was happening. Researchers started seeing these insane cancer rates, but only in a couple of villages. The first clue? Everybody was using this local volcanic rock to build everything. Their houses, the roads, you name it. But here's the real kicker, the thing that cracked the case open. It wasn't just random people getting sick. The disease was hitting certain families over and over. That told them, this has to be more than just something in the rocks.
And boom, there it is. The culprit was a tiny mineral fiber called aragonite. It was mixed right into that rock they were building with. But it was a two-part trap. You had the exposure to this dangerous fiber, and you had a genetic weakness in certain families. Put those two together, and you get an absolute perfect storm for a cancer outbreak.
Now, this story in Turkey with aragonite, it's a really intense, specific example, but it acts like a giant flashing arrow pointing us toward a much bigger, global problem with a very similar cause. And that problem is asbestos. And to really get why it's so dangerous, you have to look at its shape. It's all about the shape.
Okay, so what is this cancer we're talking about? Malignant mesothelioma. Basically, it's a really aggressive cancer that grows on the super thin lining of your internal organs. Most of the time, we're talking about the lining around the lungs, which is called the pleura. And the crazy thing is, it's almost always caused by one thing: breathing in these tiny, dangerous mineral fibers.
Right, so it turns out not all asbestos is the same. The real difference, like I said, comes down to the shape. On one hand, you've got chrysotile. Think of it as curly, kind of flexible. Your body is actually, well, it's better at breaking this stuff down and getting rid of it. But then you have the amphibal type. And this stuff, it's straight, it's rigid, it's like a tiny needle. And that's the stuff that's really, really dangerous. The reason is a word called biopersistent. It just means it gets into your body and it never leaves. It's there for life.
And this is the perfect way to think about it. The curly chrysotile fibers, they're like a soft little splinter from a piece of wood. Annoying, but your body can usually work it out. The amphiboy fibers, though? No. Those are like sharp, microscopic shards of metal. They go in deep, they pierce your cells, and they are there to stay. Forever.
So what actually happens when one of those microscopic metal shards gets inside you? Well, it kicks off a war, a silent war, inside your own body that can go on for decades without you ever knowing it's happening. Let's break down how that fight goes down. All right, so here's the play-by-play. Step 1, the sharp fiber gets stuck in the lining of your lungs. Step 2, your immune system sends in the troops, these cells that are supposed to eat and destroy invaders. But they can't. The fiber is too tough. This is called frustrated phagocytis. A great name for it, right? The immune cells are just frustrated. They can't win. So they send out distress signals, which leads to step 3, inflammation, not just for a day or a week, but chronic, non-stop inflammation for years, even decades. And all that constant irritation eventually damages the DNA of the surrounding cells until one of them finally breaks and turns cancerous.
And this, to me, is the absolute scariest part of the whole thing. This entire biological war, this siege on your own cells, it can happen without a single warning sign. No symptoms, nothing. The gap between breathing that fiber in and actually getting a diagnosis can be 20, 30, even 50 years. It's just unbelievable.
You see, that massive time lag, it's what makes this disease such an invisible enemy. By the time it finally waves a red flag and you feel sick, the fight you're facing is already uphill. A really, really steep hill.
So, you might be asking, why can't doctors just catch it early? Well, look at the symptoms.
when they finally do show up, they are so generic. Feeling short of breath? Some pain in your chest? A nagging cough? I mean, that could be anything. It's so easy to mistake it for something minor, and that's what causes these really dangerous delays in getting the right diagnosis. And when you combine that late diagnosis with how aggressive this cancer is, you get a really grim picture. For a long time, the outlook was just awful. The typical survival time after being diagnosed was only about 9 to 12 months, less than a year. But here's the hopeful part. The fight is changing. For decades, the go-to weapon was chemotherapy, basically carpet bombing the body with drugs to kill the cancer cells. But now, the whole game has changed. The new frontline treatment is immunotherapy. It's a totally different idea. Instead of poisoning the cancer, these drugs wake up your own immune system. They take off the brakes that the cancer puts on it and let your body's own defenses hunt down and kill the tumor. It's a completely revolutionary way of thinking.
So these new treatments are amazing. They offer real hope. But, with a disease like this, the best cure is never getting it at all. It all comes back to prevention. And that's the bottom line, really. When you have a disease that's caused by one specific thing, the single most powerful strategy you have is just getting rid of that thing. The only way we're ever going to truly defeat mesothelioma is by completely, 100% eliminating asbestos exposure. End of story.
Just think about that number again. 20 to 50 plus years. Someone could have been exposed to this stuff as a young man or woman back in the 70s or 80s, and they're just now, today, getting that diagnosis. That incredible long timeline is exactly why this problem didn't just disappear when we started putting in stricter rules.
And that leads us to the final and pretty sobering question. When you think about the millions upon millions of tons of asbestos that were used all through the last century, and you combine that with this massive, silent waiting period, it makes you wonder, are we at the peak of this tragedy right now, or is the deadliest part of this hidden killer's legacy still to come?